Today is our fifth and final week of Naked and Unafraid. Today's message will be taken by our pastor, Mark Pomeroy.
Hey, shout out to our Elevate Online family from wherever it is around the world you're joining us from. It's great to have you here. This is the fifth and final week of our series, Naked and Unafraid. And it's been a great series. We've been getting incredible feedback and stories of people taking next steps to what God's calling them to beyond the fence. And the big idea of this series is about taking the risks and experiencing the rewards of living a wide, open, and expansive life. And it comes from something that, or it was inspired by something that Paul wrote to the church in Corinth. And I just want to catch you up if this is your first time joining us for this series, and a refresher for the rest of us. This is what Paul wrote to the church in Corinth. He wrote, Dear Corinthians, I can't tell you how much I long for you to enter this wide, open, spacious life. We didn't fence you in. The smallness you feel comes from within you. Now, your lives aren't small, but you're living them in a small way. Now, I'm speaking as plainly as I can and with great affection. Open up your lives, live openly and expansively. And I want to just ask the question, have you been living your life too comfortably? Have you been playing it too safe? Is God calling you to move forward, to move from defense to offense, to step out of your comfort zone? And if so, this is really a series to encourage you to take that seriously, to get rid of the things that may be blocking you from taking the steps forward, and see what's on the other side of that fence. And we've looked in week 1 about risk exposure. Week 2, the call to abandon smallness. Week 3, the encouragement to push past criticism. Last week, about owning your story when something negative happens to you or is said to you that you can't control. You can still decide to own your story and write the next chapter differently. So today, by the way, if you did miss any of those, I would encourage you to go back through our YouTube channel here and dig into any one or all of those episodes of this series, and it'll help just put those pieces together. And we'd love if you shared it with your friends that you think they might benefit from being encouraged with this idea of moving beyond the fence and stepping into wide open spaces. Today I want to talk about fighting for your future. And we launched this series learning from King David, and we're going to actually land this series learning from King David, although he was not the king at the time that I want to talk about. So effectively we're going a little bit further back in history. So if you've got your Bible app, or you want to quickly download the Bible app on your device, I want to take us to 1 Samuel chapter 17. And let me give you the backstory. The backstory before we drop into this slice of history is the Philistines were the mortal enemies of the Israelites. And they found themselves, the two armies, the army of the Philistines and the army of the Israelites, found themselves faced off in battle on the opposite sides of a valley. But rather than kind of rushing in Braveheart style, they had decided to opt for what's effectively known as representative battle, where each side would choose one representative to go head to head with a representative of the other army. And whoever won that one-on-one battle, by default, won the battle on behalf of their entire army or entire nation, as it happens. And the Philistine army, their number 1 draft pick was a guy named Goliath. And it comes as no surprise when you learn that he was over 9 feet tall, and that he would wear 20 kilograms or 50 pounds of bronze armor effortlessly. And having been chosen by the Philistine army to represent them, he stood on their side of the valley and verbally taunted the army of Israel for 40 consecutive days, calling out what he's going to do to them, who's going to take up the battle, who's brave enough, and after 40 days, nobody from the army of Israel was willing to step up to fight Goliath. And that's a problem, because what was at stake is if the Philistines won the representative battle, then they would actually take the nation of Israel captive and actually force them to live as slaves. And whilst that wasn't a future anyone wanted, nobody had it in them to step up and take on Goliath. And so the leader of the Israel army was actually the king of Israel at the time, King Saul. After 40 days, he decided to sweeten the pot. He decided to incentivize his troops. And so he put the call out. He said, if anybody is willing to step up and take on Goliath on behalf of the nation of Israel, he was going to give them and their entire family a lifetime of tax-free status. Hello. And that same soldier he was giving his daughter's hand in marriage, and history suggests that his daughter was very beautiful. So you would actually be stepping into a lifetime of fame and fortune, and all you had to do was be willing to fight Goliath. Now, in the background, kind of standing on the periphery of the army of Israel, was a young teenage boy named David. And he wasn't part of the army. In fact, he was only there because his dad had sent him to do an Uber Eats run and bring some food to his brothers who were in the army. And David thought he heard the king say that whoever was willing to take on this giant Goliath would be given a lifetime of tax-free status for his entire family and the king's daughter's hand in marriage. And he wasn't sure. He's a bit noisy, and everyone, was like in disbelief. So David just said to the guys around him, David, who was talking to the men standing around him, asked, "What's in it for the man that kills that Philistine and gets rid of this ugly blot on Israel's honor? Who does he think he is anyway? This uncircumcised Philistine, taunting the armies of God alive." Well, they told him what everyone was saying about what the king would do for the man who killed the Philistine. So David immediately faced a risk versus reward fork in the road. He was confronted with the question that we asked in week 1. Was he going to stand by safely and watch from the window? Or was he going to risk exposure and go and dance on the street? And I don't think it's going to be too much of a stretch to presume there may have been like a dialogue going on in David's head at that time, asking 2 questions. Firstly, asking the question, if I don't fight, no one else is, so why should I? If I don't fight, God has no opportunity to give us the victory. If I don't fight, my nation will be humiliated and become slaves to her enemies. And if I don't fight, then the opportunities and the possibility that God's placed in front of me, I'll never get to experience those rewards. But what if I do fight? If I do fight, I'm convinced God will give us the victory. If I do fight, our nation will be free of this oppression. And if I do fight, then there will be a bright and prosperous future for my entire family. And this is a very well-known story, so there's no spoilers here, but thankfully, David chose to risk exposure. He chose the fork in the road. He chose to go down the path of risk and not comfort, to dance on the street and not simply watch from the window. One of the myths that too many people believe is that if God promised something, it will automatically happen. It will effortlessly happen. It will hassle-free happen. However, the truth of it is if God's promised you something beyond the fence, you're almost always going to have to fight for it. Giants are almost always going to be standing in your way, putting you down and wanting to pull you down. See, everyone faces opposition on the pathway to purpose, but the people that experience the greatest rewards are the ones who see the giants as defeatable and who see the God that is in them and with them as being bigger than any giants they ever face. So if you're gearing up to get battle ready, if you're hearing God calling you to move forward, to move beyond the fence, to move out of your comfort zone, to move towards something that He's calling you to take a hold of and to do, then you need to get battle ready. So to help you get battle ready, let's talk strategy. First thing I want you to understand is that while some battles are external, circumstances, people, some battles are internal. That often your greatest enemy isn't the giant in front of you, but it's how you see yourself compared to the giant. And David took the pro move. Yes, he acknowledged that Goliath was big on the outside, but he also acknowledged that David, was big on the inside. And whilst he saw Goliath as powerful, he saw his God as even more powerful. And it's too easy when we face a giant to look at what we don't have and what we lack. And yet if God's called you towards something and there's a giant in your way, then chances are He's prepared you and He's equipped you with the things that you're going to need to run head first and take on the giant. Second strategy tip I want to give you is that winning a battle isn't the same as winning the war. Sometimes, if and when you've won a battle, you might need to saddle up and fight another battle, and maybe fight another battle. And you keep fighting battles until you win the war. Here's another pro tip for strategy. There's no such thing as a purposeful, pressure-free life. If you want a purposeful marriage, it comes with pressure. If you want to do purposeful parenting, it comes with pressure. If you want to have a purposeful business or purposeful career, it comes with pressure. Not always constant and not always at the same level, but it's inescapable. There will be circumstances and seasons that come gift-wrapped with pressure. But pressure is where babies are born and where diamonds are formed. And God does some of His best work in pressure-filled places. So the goal isn't to avoid pressure. The goal is to be our best in the midst of pressure. In the second week of this series, I talked about abandoning smallness and gave you a little bit of the story of my wife Louisa, who was working several years ago, about 6 years ago, in an administration role at a high school. And while she loved the role, and she was having a level of impact in the lives of high schoolers, she felt God was calling her to have more impact. And so she took on a course of extra studies. On top of her full-time job, she enrolled part-time in university to complete a bachelor's of education, which then led to her completing a master's of education. And in this year, she's now the head of years 9 and 10, overseeing 600 students at a high school. And I use that as an example of somebody that stepped beyond the fence, that heard God calling them to live a wide open and expansive life. But I kind of buried the lead. See, when Louisa took on the course of studies on top of her full-time job, she would effectively 5 days a week walk in the door at the end of the working day, pile up some food on a little plate, put that alongside her laptop, pop open her laptop and sit every night and work on her university for 3, 4 or more hours. You know, she pulled some all-nighters to do and get some assignments in. She was tapping away weekends and many weekends. And all of that was pressure. In that season, there was pressure. But had she not brought her best in the midst of the pressure, she would never have gotten to where she's gotten to now. So don't look to avoid the pressure. Look to be your best in the midst of pressure. Okay, next strategy, pro tip. Slow cooking beats microwaving. See, if you're a foodie fan watching maybe some Netflix series, you've seen some barbecue restaurants, you've seen some of these slow cooking restaurants, and you see that there's often lines around the block for people queuing up to go and eat the food of these slow cooked barbecue type restaurants. One thing you won't see on those same shows on Netflix is anybody lining up around the corner to eat the food of a microwave restaurant. Because slow cooking always beats microwave cooking. And some of the motivation for God allowing us to experience a fight is because, and not get an instant microwaved victory, is because He's actually not just wanting us to experience a set of circumstances on the other side of the giant, He's also wanting us to grow through the whole process of fighting the giant and how we approach it. That He wants to grow us in the midst of a fight. So battles are both event and process. Growth is often event and process. But if we only think of it as an event, then we're going to just down tools once the event's over, or we're going to expect a quick victory, but that's not always God's MO. So don't just pray in your pressure-filled fight world circumstances for God to make it better. Pray that God will make you better. So as we finish this series, here's my big question. What's your next move? What is it that God's calling you to? And you've heard His voice and you know a sense of what that looks like. What's your next move? What is the thing you're going to do to step over the fence and towards what it is that God's called you to? Because if you don't, then this is just interesting information. But if God's calling you to step beyond the fence, to move towards a wide, open, expansive life, then my very intentional and specific question for you is, what's your next move? And as you consider that, I want to pray something over you that Paul, the same guy that wrote to the church in Corinth, that Paul wrote to another church in Ephesus. And this is the prayer, and this is my prayer for you. I ask God of the Master, Jesus Christ, the God of glory, to make you intelligent and discerning in knowing Him personally, your eyes focused and clear so that you can see exactly what it is He's calling you to do. Grasp the immensity of this glorious way of life He has for His followers. Oh, the utter extravagance of His work in us who trust Him. Endless energy, boundless strength. Now, don't go anywhere, because I want to show you a friend of ours who, in the last 2 weeks, stepped over the fence, chose to move from victim to victor, and we had the privilege of hearing his story and baptizing him last week in our live experience, and we want to share that with you so that you will be encouraged and you'll be inspired. Here's Michael.
My journey begins when I was in my mid-teens, and I just felt that there was something wrong with this place, this earth. That the way we're living is not the way we're supposed to be living. I could never put my finger on it, but so I ignored what I was feeling and went through my life just working and doing what everyone does and just thinking, you know, this is as good as it gets. But then we had a series of unfortunate events that happened starting in 2011. My partner's son got hit by a car, hit and run victim, left with a massive brain injury, so we had to stop our jobs and care for him. And then from that point there was a series of disasters, I'll call them. There was like 7 deaths that happened from friends and people close to us. And then I had a heart attack in 2016, and then a year after that my father committed suicide. So yeah, the world just stopped making sense. Everything was just like, you know, what's going on? Basically I called out and said, what's going on? You know, why is it like this? And then I started looking for answers, and boy did I get them. So yeah, I read a book called A Course in Miracles, and I got to a part in there about 2 brothers being in the same room, having never seen each other, but just now for the first time having seen each other. And then something inside me just went boom. While I was reading that book, Course in Miracles, it was like, it felt like Jesus was standing right beside me and talking in my ear. That's what it felt like. And yeah, I can't describe it. The only way I can describe the feeling is it felt like I had a crown on my head, but it wasn't just on my head, it was in my head as well. And my whole body was buzzing. And yeah, it's just been revelation after revelation ever since then. And Jesus came into my life and flipped me right side up. So, well, I went to Sunday school when I was a kid. That's about it. I've picked up little bits of the Bible here and there from movies and stuff, and, you know, but yeah, I've never actually gone to church regularly or anything like that. I've only just recently started reading the Bible. So, and it says that Jesus got baptised, and if you want to follow him, do this. So here I am now, okay, waiting to get baptised.
Michael Murphy, do you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that he died for your sins, and do you confess that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Saviour?
Yes, I do.
Then I now baptise you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.